Thank you, everyone, for joining us for what I think is going to be a really fun discussion and insightful panel. We've got a great group of panelists here to talk about a really exciting topic. So my name is Joe Watt. I lead up ECMC Group's Education Impact Fund, which is an impact investment fund powered by a national nonprofit ECMC group that is focused on improving access and outcomes for learners in post-secondary education. So we invest across stages, in companies, in funds, really a flexible investment platform focused on driving improved outcomes in post-secondary education here in the US. So I'm really excited to be joined by this great group of panelists here for a discussion on how do we better serve hidden workers. Really important topic, one that I think, like hidden workers, is often overlooked in the discussion. And so before we get into introductions, wanted to start with just a little bit of an introduction on the topic to make sure that we're all sort of aligned on who it is that we're talking about. And so when we say hidden workers, we're talking about people that are facing barriers to employment that are, very diverse, that are often overlooked by traditional hiring practices, but that can be really meaningful when it comes to ultimately achieving employment outcomes. So folks like formerly incarcerated people, folks like military veterans, people with disabilities, people with health issues, people who are caring for family members, immigrants, refugees. It is an incredibly diverse and varied population, but one that is each with their unique needs. And I think it's also important to remember that these folks are, the term hidden workers doesn't mean these people are hiding. It means that we don't see them. And so I think it's incredibly important as we embark upon this discussion to not only sort of name and talk about the different groups here, but to recognize that it is up to employers, it is up to policymakers, it is up to post-secondary institutions and training providers to meet those workers where they are to better support them through that. So I think we can go down the line here, and it would be great if you could introduce yourself, the organization that you're coming from, and the work that you do, and then maybe share a personal anecdote or an example of a hidden worker or a population that you are most sort of passionate about or serve that can maybe illustrate the topic here for the audience. So starting with Sarah.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Strober. I am the Workforce Development Market Director at Interplay Learning, which is a immersive skill-building platform for the trades. Using virtual reality and online immersive videos, we get people from having zero skills to really ready for careers in electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and so much more. We work with employers, we work with nonprofits, we work with community colleges, and we work with a nonprofit in Detroit called Choices, which works with young adults impacted by violence in their communities. And we have an awesome set of learners working with us through Choices. Choices had in-person programming for a long time, but they realized that they could expand and scale their program by bringing in Interplay. So we have one learner in particular who for the last year has been using Interplay really regularly every week. He has a whole lot of skills, let me tell you, and is all set for a career, a really high-paying career in the trades that the city of Detroit and Interplay will help him find. So I'm really excited about the work that we're doing and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone.
That should work better. Thank you. I know. Okay. So my name is Jamie Fall. I'm Workforce and Economic Strategies Director for the Economic Development Collaborative in Ventura County, California. And my work there consists largely of helping lead their digital upskilling work We received a grant a couple of years ago to help raise the digital skills of 3 different groups that I can talk more about later. But people with really no digital skills at all, they've never owned a computer, they likely have never turned on a computer, don't know how to save a file or use it. Second group, we're also providing certifications for people who are in the workforce, but they want some sort of IT certification in order to be able to move up in their careers. And then the third group, during the pandemic, we were really shocked by the number of calls we received from small businesses that didn't even have the technical skills to upload their paperwork for PPP loans. So we had to do a lot of that, or they, prior to my joining, had to do a lot of that internally. So the third group that we're serving are small business owners and entrepreneurs. We're helping them get their businesses online and then market their companies online. So those are the 3 groups that we're helping. And the most impact we've had to date is with the group that have really no computer skills. We have a computer basics course that we're taking into the local communities and providing free of charge, giving everyone a Chromebook that participates. And the kind of prototype individual that goes through our course leaves with more confidence. They're able to do more at work, and they're able to do more at home. They're able to help their children with homework, for example, and do a lot more a lot more things online that they couldn't do before, communicate with their children's teachers, for example, and things like that. That would be a very typical story that we would hear from our participant.
So I'm Artie Finn. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer for Origin. We provide pathways to sustainable employment for folks who are justice impacted. Mostly that means serving people who are incarcerated in prisons and jails across the country, but we also serve parole, probation, alternatives to incarceration, and we are a social impact company. So we are both a public benefits corporation with a double bottom line, as well as a B corporation. We are now, I think, in 19 states. We provide hardware, software, and data to jurisdictions who pay us in order to provide that service to folks who are incarcerated. And before I get into my story, I want to share a couple of stats. Sorry, Joe. There's 2 million people in this country that are incarcerated at any given time. Another 10 million people cycle in and out of incarceration every year. And between 30 and 70 million have some sort of record in this country. So we're not really talking about a small population that are hidden. Just some facts about incarceration. 17% of the folks who incarcerate in this country get any access to programming. And we measure them by saying, oh, well, how long will it take you to get back into incarceration? But we don't give them any skills. And I want to share one other stat because I thought this was crazy. 75% of folks who have been incarcerated are unemployed 1 year after release. So I want to talk about a woman that I met recently who actually used one of our devices while she was incarcerated in the DC jails. She was sentenced as a federal prisoner for 4 years and was bounced. So I don't know if you know, but many folks who are incarcerated in the federal system are housed in other facilities. So she had moved from facility to facility. She had started in California where she lived and was moved all the way out to the East Coast, ended up in the DC jails. And by the way, I think she was in her 2nd year of incarceration at that point, and it was during the pandemic. And unfortunately, folks who were housed in the DC jails during the pandemic were locked down 23 hours a day and 45 minutes. She got out once a day to shower for 15 minutes. So she's alone in her cell, and the only thing she has is an Origin tablet. And she picked it up, and she said, you know what? I'm going to change my life. And she used that tablet to get not only a degree, but a CompTIA certification. And she used that certification and all the time she spent on our device to not only knock her sentence down by a year. So instead of serving 4, she served 3. And she eventually got a job after much hard work after release and a lot of networking. And she now works for LA County using her CompTIA certification.
So maybe we can just pick off that there, like maybe getting a bit more tactical. Like you said, eventually she got a job, and she probably is better positioned than most people as they are released. So like, what are some of the like very sort of specific challenges or we've talked about how people that are incarcerated don't have email addresses. One of the stats that always jumps out to me about frontline workers is there's millions of them. 80% of frontline workers don't have email addresses at work. Like, it's just like baffling for people that are coming from more like knowledge type roles. And so like, what are some of the tactical challenges that someone like that is facing that employers should be thinking about?
Well, I mean, it's the practical things. Like you said, they don't have email addresses. How do you interview while you're incarcerated? Unless you have access to technology, we happen to have something called virtual classroom, which allows somebody to interview. But employers don't just hire somebody with degrees and credentials. They actually want to see that they have soft skills, enduring skills, they have financial literacy. And all of those things aren't really thought about. They also want to see, especially if you're incarcerated, that you've focused on your own rehabilitation. Have you taken the courses that are available to you for anger management, for mental health? Like, those are all things we don't think about because we think a traditional resume is okay, and that's all we need. But when you're incarcerated or you've been involved in the criminal justice system, your resume doesn't look really normal. So we really have to figure out as a country, like, how do we present people who are hidden from the workforce in a different way? So one of the things we're working on is what we call an employability framework, so that somebody who's incarcerated can actually spend time in programming, and then we can show it to employers in a way that says, oh, you have durable skills. Oh, you have all of these things that I never realized somebody who could be incarcerated could have. So for us, it's about how do we reframe the access that people do have and then overcome the barriers that will prevent them from even interviewing prior to release.
A couple of things that I would add. Our program came about reverse for what a lot of people have to do. We actually received an earmark to develop the program, so we actually didn't have a program, and we had to go about creating that program and what we were going to do in our local area. So we started out with lots and lots of calls to folks to learn what was available in the local area, what already existed. We didn't want to duplicate what was there, and we heard from all of the education and nonprofit providers that, oh yeah, it's, all of the computer basics classes, all of that already exists. We really don't need any of that in the local area. But what we found, they were available at the community college, so people had to go there. The classes were all a semester long. So, you know, we were trying to serve people. Think of a farm worker, for example, that has a family. They can't go for 16 weeks of classes. They can't, you know, leave their family. So we took the classes into the neighborhoods, and we've provided the classes there. We've given the device. A lot of people didn't have a device to even take the classes at the community college. People didn't have internet access, so we've tried to help make that available as well. And we've tried to time the classes so people could participate in them who otherwise wouldn't be able to. And you know, other things about marketing, for example, it's like if it's a computer basics class, you can't just market it using social media, right? Because that's not going to work. So we used a lot of kind of more boots on the ground work with the adult schools. We partnered with all of the adult schools in Ventura County to develop the curriculum and to help market it to their audience as well. So those are some of the things that we've had to do to get to those hidden workers.
So maybe let's switch gears to sort of the funding landscape here. Sarah, you come from a workforce development background. There's all different types of federal, state, local funding available, Perkins, Pell, you know, WIOA. But that's available for both institutions, it's available for learners, it's available for employers to leverage, but it's incredibly opaque, might be a generous description. And so difficult to ultimately unlock those things. So could you maybe like shed some light on just the landscape of funding and sort of the different players that are available that have to be at the table?
Yeah, so over the last several years, workforce development has been in the headlines a whole lot. Employers have realized that they have to hire for attitude, not aptitude, otherwise they're gonna have no one work for them. We've realized that high-paying jobs lead to economic mobility. And skilled trades especially, I think, since the pandemic, we've seen the need for those careers really take off, but also respect for those careers really take off. And so I think there's a lot of thought leadership when it comes to workforce development, and we all talk about the need for workforce development, but actually who is doing the training becomes really difficult, and how to fund that training similarly becomes really difficult. So at Interplay, we think about the workforce development landscape in a few different buckets. We have direct program providers. Those are nonprofits, they are unions, and other organizations that are focused on the learner. Those organizations are often different than the folks funding the programs. So that can be the federal government, local government, state government. There are a lot of grants from philanthropies that are really helpful. And then we also have conveners and connectors, and those are the economic development corporations of the world that are figuring out strategies for workforce development in their regions. Workforce boards provide individual training accounts to some learners, but also play a role in building workforce strategy for the region. And I really think of those connectors as putting the puzzle pieces together. I've named a lot of different types of organizations. That means it can be really hard for the learner to figure out where to go and how to get help. And much of the funding has stipulations. There was a really good federal grant I was looking at recently that at surface level looked like it would just fund training in construction trades, but it turned out that learners would also have to build units of affordable housing in that program, which is great, and we need affordable housing, and also made it really hard for a lot of organizations to apply for that funding. So I think that what we're kind of all in the workforce development space grappling with is how can we enable direct program providers to have really good training tools. They can't make the training tools themselves. They just don't have time and they don't have money. And I think that's where Interplay comes in and does a really good job, is we have affordable training that enables people to scale their workforce development programs. We will help them find funding to do that. And I think that as a training provider, by bringing together all the different parts of the system, hopefully we can make an impact.
So let's go off script here a little bit. Building off of that, Interplay is doing some innovative stuff. Origin is doing some innovative stuff. Often what I hear from companies that are working with workforce development organizations is that there's very few incentives for them to take risks on innovative training providers. They do what they know, and they sort of stick with that. How do you crack that?
I think that has historically been the case. Simultaneously, I think if employers want workers, they're going to need some training solutions and creative training solutions. Otherwise, they're just not going to have anyone. Like I was talking to a precision glass company in Syracuse, New York, that said that they just hire people if they are excited. And then they will teach them high school math. They have a full-time math teacher on staff. They have profit sharing at the company every month. And if they don't do that, they won't have a product. And so I think that employers are realizing more and more, and might I even say we don't give them enough credit for those who are realizing that they need to provide education as a benefit, but they also need to plan to train people as soon as they come in. And if they want to do that at scale, then they know it has to be virtual.
Well, I feel really compelled to make some sort of shattering the glass ceiling joke now. Anyway, what I think I would, please hold your laughter till later, please. I think what I would encourage audience people in the audience is that for so many years I was in like the workforce system, did a lot of work in there, and it was like all the work around employer engagement, right? How do we engage employers? How do we get the right people on the workforce board? How do we get them to show up at our meetings and get actual people with funding authority within a company to be engaged? And over the past number of years that I've done different type of work really around engaging with employers, I realize how wrong I did it for so many years. What's really critical is that we find out how to activate employers and get them to spend the money they're already spending doing the things we want them to do. And that really is a mind shift of, instead of trying to get them to be a part of what we're doing, it's like, how do we really motivate them and make sure they're spending their money in ways that we think they should, in some cases using the tools that we think we should. And I promise I will not use humor again. You can keep my mic on. It's okay.
What does that look like? Like specifically, like how are you sort of realigning your efforts to meet the
So you've got to know what the pain points are of the company, right? It's not, here's the service that we're providing, here's the work that we're doing. It's like, what's keeping you up at night, and really understanding that struggle. What are they investing their money in? Who are they hiring now to do the work that you could be helping them to do, and what sort of success are they having? Companies are spending so much money around education, training, and development, right? It's like, we've got to tap into that and get them to think about the things that they're doing differently and help them improve the way they're doing it, right? So many employers will spend money on education and training, but they're not tracking who does that, who completes a program or who gets a college degree or something after they're already hired. And you have to help them improve the structure of their programs as well, so they can see the benefit and see it directly tied to the service that you're doing, not this, come to our meeting, and you can have some influence over a couple $100,000 of state funding. I mean, it's just not worth their time and effort.
I would just add, I think we have to look at the equation differently. I work with a very unique population, but for us, we've realized that actually the key to getting folks who are justice impacted employed doesn't lie with the Department of Corrections. It lies with the Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, even workforce boards. And they have the funding. They have the wherewithal to invest in this. And they have employers who are knocking down on their doors going, hey, we want skilled workers, bring them to us. And now, so we're in completely different conversations where departments of labor are coming to us and saying, can you help us train the workforce? And we'll pay for it. So it's almost a employers are saying, we can't really figure out this equation, at least not for the folks that we talk to.
Where does skills-based hiring play into that? I know, Artie, you have very strong feelings about it.
Well, I think if you have, particularly if you have a felony, back to some of the barriers that folks face, like, A, you have a felony, there's certain jobs you just can't get, and then B, you have to differentiate yourself from a quote-unquote somebody without a felony. And so for me, skills-based hiring for justice-impacted folks is almost impossible because they can't show what they've learned off a resume. And so they really have to focus on certifications. I know that's like a bad word, but it's honestly the only way they can really differentiate themselves.
Yeah, I would add to that. The other problem is that they don't have the work experience. Employers, it's all the same.
The resume doesn't look like anything.
So employers, even those that have moved to skills-based hiring, a lot of them aren't removing the 3 years or whatever of experience in the field, and that's another
that's
real
a good
challenge.
point. That's a very good point. But you know who's changing the nature of this? Government. You have all these states that are now saying you don't have to have a post-secondary degree in order to work here. And that might be because they're really hurting for hiring folks. But if it's going to change, it's going to change there. So my friend Salina, who could get a job working for LA County, it's because government was willing to hire her without a traditional background.
Maybe this is also where I can put in a plug for how awesome the skilled trades are. Because how many of you have hired a plumber, electrician, HVAC technician in the last year? Oh, yeah. We probably spent a lot of money collectively. And those folks have really good jobs. In the skilled trades, there are a lot of small businesses. You don't need to have a college degree to start a business, a small plumbing business, and start hiring people and providing jobs. And so I think what is really neat when it comes to the skilled trades and skills-based hiring is if you have a certain level of proficiency and know-how and confidence, you're going to get a job and you're going to be able to have a career in that profession.
Problem,
Yeah.
needs solution. Can you guys talk about the?
Yeah, so we're super excited because we just partnered with Interplay Learning. We just announced it last Wednesday. And the reason we did that is because we knew there were no barriers to getting employment if you have a felony. And you can be a plumber, you can get trained. The only barriers when you're incarcerated are how do you get access to programming and how do you get access to classroom space, which if anyone's been inside a prisoner jail is at a premium, if it exists at all. So being able to offer it digitally to an individual who's sitting in their cell and can learn at their own pace and at their own speed is really unique. And then they come out with either the credential that they need or the readiness for an apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship, which then is at a sustainable wage. So I'm so excited about this.
We're really excited too. We got virtual training is such a perfect way to get people ready for a job in the skilled trades before they are working with really heavy machinery. They can get really close to knowing exactly what to do. We got a letter from an individual who is currently incarcerated begging us to expand the offering to more of the folks that he is currently with and beyond, and I wish that it was as easy as snapping my fingers and expanding the program to more correctional facilities, but I think that we can do that over time, and we're really excited about that.
So we just launched this program a couple months ago. We have jurisdictions where half of the folks who are incarcerated have signed up for the program and are going through. That's pretty incredible.
I think one of the risks of sort of a skills-based hiring model and sort of the short-term program certificates, like, is that it prepares you for your first job, but it maybe doesn't provide the skills for that next job and towards a career. So can you just maybe talk about how you're thinking about that for the folks that you're working with, how training providers need to be thinking about stackable credentials, or how sort of ecosystem stakeholders can support those more skilling journeys versus just like the first stop. Jump ball.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think when we think about how we approach the skilled trades or frankly any job does it provide initially a sustaining wage? And two, is there a career pathway that somebody can engage in? So we're actually focused in 3 areas: IT, which definitely has stackable credentials. And we actually ran a very successful program inside the DC jails, 10-week program where we got an entire housing unit a certified cloud practitioner credential, which is sort of the foundational credential. And we had I won't name the company. They told us we would have a 50% pass rate. I told the guys, you better get me a 100% pass rate. They came in at 90. So pretty excited about that. That's a stackable credential. Manufacturing is another area that has stackable credentials. And of course the trades, where once you get in, you can, you have many different pathways.
Yeah. I guess I would go back and just also talk about the importance of the work experience in addition to the stackable credentials. You know, how can you get any sort of internship or something so somebody can have on their resume that they've done that type of work in any way? And again, you know, I wish I could change what employers do because it's still 3 years of work experience in many cases. Sometimes it's 1 year, but you know, any work experience is gonna trump what's, you know, none whatsoever.
Are there any models like apprenticeships or, you know, things like that that you've seen that have addressed that challenge?
There are a number of things that are really positive. We actually, the IT certificates that we've done, we made part of our contract that we did with our providers that they would get internships for the people that went through the program. So they're, you know, somebody who has funding, you can write that into the program that you're creating to make sure people have that opportunity. We're working with our community college district that has some funding available as well to pay for internships. So they can pay 50% for a for-profit company, up to 90% for a nonprofit. They'll pay for the wages for up to a year to give somebody some work experience as well. And there are you know, all types of vendors that are out there that have internships built into their structure of their programs as well.
But you got to know how to network to get to those.
Right.
Very hard if you're incarcerated.
Any closing thoughts maybe before we open it up for Q&A?
Before coming to Interplay, I worked at the U.S. Department of Commerce, focused on economic development. And Commerce right now is allocating billions of dollars around the country, whether that be for chips and semiconductor fabs, whether that be for broadband, that is for tech hubs and Recompete and all of these programs that I am really excited about. The success of those programs is really contingent on having a workforce that can build that infrastructure, that is ready to kind of enable the growth that is supposed to come along with those funding programs, and that will enable the continuation of the growth once it gets started. So I think one thing I'd love for you all to leave with is just that workforce development is at the base of all economic development, whether that is via investment by the federal government, whether that's investment by companies. And I think that for all of the workforce dev practitioners in the room, I'm sure you're all told quite frequently that you need to harness federal funding, and it's really hard. And I hope that we can do it. But I also think that there's really no way that any of these federal investments from the Biden-Harris administration can be successful without it. So if you have ideas on that, let's talk more after the panel.
I suppose my final thought would be just to question your assumptions. We went into our program, there were, you know, people had so many assumptions of, oh yes, we've got all of this in the local area. It's all working great. And one provider in particular said, well, here are all the things that people are doing Google searches for in the area. And we said, okay, well, what if you don't have a computer? And that's why one of the things that led to our computer basics class. And we've had a waiting list. We've trained over 300 people, a waiting list of over 100 people still in the city of Oxnard trying to get into the program. So really just go back to the beginning, question all of the assumptions about how people find your program, how they get through it, how they be successful, and how they get a job afterward.
So I'm going to be specific to my industry, which is one, I think many of you know employers who have banned the box, Walmart, some of those. Every employer should ban the box because when you talk to employers who are willing to hire justice impacted, they say, oh, yes, I'll hire somebody who's justice impacted, but they can't have a felony, they can't have a violent crime, they can't have all of these things that create other barriers for folks. There's also, in case you didn't know, and not in the service trades, thank goodness, but there are also licensing barriers. So many states are looking at removing those, so put pressure on your local representatives to address some of those systemic barriers. And then finally, and I know we love the federal government because I think they've invested a lot in this, They have a federal bonding program, and there's also federal tax credits, I believe. They don't go far enough, and I don't think they're a big enough incentive for employers. And so we really have to attack this in a multifaceted level to actually get real change.
Fantastic. Questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Allison Lands. I work for a company called Skyhive Technologies. We use labor market intelligence and workforce AI to surface the hidden workers and connect them to these jobs. But I'm a workforce developer career long, but came in through a very traditional economic development door. So my question is, with all of the programs and the trillions of dollars that EDA and commerce have pushed into almost every community, rural or urban, I'm noticing in stakeholder groups closer to the ground that they're having trouble not harnessing the federal dollars, but deploying the federal dollars. And furthermore, that various sources of federal workforce investment are competing with one another for the same scarce pool of workers. For example, like infrastructure may also be competing with the Army's modernization efforts. They're both looking for advanced manufacturing workers. How would you recommend, like, what are your thoughts on how we de-silo some of that funding so that as resources are, you know, flooding into communities like Tulsa, et cetera, that they're able, like, not every community is a Tulsa where there's that cohesion about how can we, like, get a strategic plan together for deploying it. Thoughts on that, since you can maybe speak from sort of the inside of it, and perhaps Jamie or others can speak from like the community coalition or consortium view.
You ask a lot of really good questions. And I do not work for the U.S. Department of Commerce anymore. This is not the U.S. Department of Commerce's perspective. I also think that Tulsa is doing a really excellent job and is a model of economic and workforce development. And Juanita and I were saying yesterday that we wish more cities could be like Tulsa. I think ultimately what it comes down to is starting workforce development quite young. American Airlines in Tulsa brings fourth graders to the hangar to get them excited about aviation. We at Interplay do a lot of career exploration starting in middle school, but we have programs that will use virtual reality to introduce students in 9th grade to a lot of different trades before they choose their specialization for grades 10 to 12. I think that really what it comes down to is getting folks the skills that they need young before they need to rely on other funding sources to get that training. And to your question about how to break down silos between different funding sources, that is like the billion-dollar question for the federal government, and I don't have the solution. So true, so true.
I'm not sure what I have to add to that. I mean, that is so hard to do. I mean, it just, you know, whatever I could say is going to seem trite. You know, it's about the relationships at the local level. It's about the trust between the different organizations working together. And there's just so much that we need to do to get better at how we do that. Just, you know, decades-long histories of everyone protecting their piece of the pie. And I wish I had a secret, you know, to tell you, and I'm not sure I do. I don't mind saying I don't know when I don't know. It's really hard, time-consuming work in relationship development, and I don't know what else does it.
Spend it in training our hidden workers, incarcerated learners. They are a great workforce, and I would be remiss not to add that they are probably some of the best employees. 15% of our workforce is formerly incarcerated, and they're the best employees we have by far.
So we serve individuals with disabilities at my organization, and we do a lot of workforce development, work-based learning, and a lot of those individuals have a felony record because, you know, disability is a big umbrella. And so I guess my question is kind of like two parts. So one, does Origin, can you guys work with, do you only work with individuals who are like currently incarcerated, or can they just have to have some sort of
They need to have some sort of program manager or be under some sort of umbrella. We work in parole, probation, alternatives to incarceration. We just need somebody to manage the program and also to support the learners.
Okay. And then I think my other question is for Interplay, really. So how, and maybe this is like getting in the weeds a little bit, but how does the certifications that you're offering for skilled trades, that's like, is that only for one area that you guys are serving, or it's like nationwide? Does it cover across states? Because we're in Alabama.
There are definitely different certifications and requirements per state that we can talk about. After this, Vanessa and I would be happy to discuss with you. We offer a lot of national-based certifications through our platform.
We work with them. We work in 19 states, so it's not an issue.
So, sorry. One thing that's been an issue, at least with Minnesota, where I'm from, we're wanting to get people with lived experience some of those justice interactions that they've dealt with, but because they can't get through the DHS background check, they're unable to get employed. Has your organization been able to circumvent that at all?
I wish I could say yes. The answer is no. But Minnesota, I do know, I don't know if the legislation actually passed, but they were looking at removing some of the barriers for folks with felony records to get into certain industries. I don't think it covered healthcare. I'm 90% sure. But we do work with, in one state, CVS, who's hiring workers. Now, they can't be pharmacists and things like that, but they can do many other jobs around and still be involved in healthcare.
Hi. You guys talked a little bit about stackable credentials. Have you seen folks use that for promotion, or have they used it for like measuring mastery or proficiency, or is it just for hiring?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
It's all of the above.
We definitely see that in the trades. We have a massive catalog with hundreds of hours of training. And some workers just need to get to step A or point A, but then we also have a lot of workers who have been working in the trades for a decade and then need the next set of skills in order to earn more, get a promotion, etc.
Yeah, we have companies that work more in the technology space that see the same thing, where whether it's a specific software tool that they need to show proficiency in, or just a sort of step in their same role or job pathway, it can lead to wage growth, it can lead to title and promotion, and it's definitely all the above.
Do they measure it for like just like checking the box, like you meant this stackable credential, or is it measured a different way?
I think it depends on the company, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is like there are some employers that are highly committed to sort of these equitable approaches towards career progression, and there are other employers that are maybe a little bit more face value in their approach. And I think the however many $1 million question is, how do we get more people to do it more?
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ryan Moser. I'm a journalist with Resolve Philly. Hi, Artie. My question is, we can train in workforce development, and you can have an opportunity for people to get certificates, but how do you change the mindset? How do you encourage fair chance companies to actually hire? Because I'm formerly incarcerated myself, and I can tell you personally that we need companies like Origin that will provide a certain percentage of their employees to be formerly incarcerated or justice impacted. So how do we encourage those companies?
I think you have to have organizations like Jobs for the Future and Worth Rises, any number of the nonprofits involved in the field who actually work with employers and start to put pressure on them. And you got to have the federal government start to offer greater incentives for companies to hire. I mean, We're in this weird place where you'll talk to the head of Department of Labor in Tennessee, and she'll say, you know, we have 150,000 open jobs, and we can't fill them because we don't have skilled workers. And now Tennessee's investing through their Department of Labor in providing, through us, training programs across the state in every single jail in every county in Tennessee because they want to change the equation. So to me, that's really, government's got to step in. I hate to sound like a broken record because I'm an entrepreneur. I run a private company. Like, companies provide solutions. Government provides policy, and it's got to change across the country.
Thank you.
Hi, I had a question about higher ed specifically. So I have seen instructions to take down requirements in terms of degree level and years of experience and things like that theoretically, and then when it happens, it gets kicked back. This won't get approved, and well, we do need this, and we want an administrative aide to have a PhD. I don't know why. So I wanted to know if you could, I'm being a little cheeky, but you get it. So I wanted to know if you could talk about when you've worked maybe with, and you don't need to name names, but specific higher education institutions that have actually kind of gone over that crest of the theoretical to things that they have in writing to actually doing what they say they're trying to do.
Yeah, we work with a number of post-secondary institutions across the country. Also, one of our investors, WGU, actually has takes lived experience and applies that for credentials, for credits. So I think the landscape is changing slowly but surely, and I think it was really served by Pell opening up to incarcerated learners, and now we're taking a different approach to post-secondary. I think it's also helped by the fact that a lot of post-secondary is starting to focus on, well, what kind of jobs do we get people afterwards? And that's where experience comes into play, much more than the barriers that they want to throw up. There'll always be those institutions, but I think increasingly they're more on the side that is right.
Yeah, to add to that, I think that we're seeing that for higher education institutions or community colleges to be competitive, they need to be offering a variety of career-based education options. And so Interplay enables higher ed to be competitive and prove to learners, like, you should come here because we can tell you that there's a massive shortage of HVAC technicians and we can help you get a job afterwards. I think that we all know that four-year college and liberal arts degrees aren't for everyone. And so if we can prove that there's a need for those jobs and that the community college sees that need and is addressing it, then they'll attract a lot more learners.
The Department of Labor recently expanded registered apprenticeships to include teachers, which is exciting. And my organization has been supporting school districts and convening folks to apply to get registered apprenticeship for their teacher training programs, which is especially exciting for like a paraprofessional or a teacher's aide who didn't necessarily have access to a teacher certification program before. However, the challenge we're still running up against is oftentimes those folks, while they have like really rich experiences, they're embedded in the community, they are like awesome teacher candidates, they are still, some of them, especially in states like Texas, struggling to pass the English language proficiency exam, which they have to pass in order to be eligible for the teacher certification program. And so getting them access to like language learning programs is really challenging because there's a wait list. It costs money. That's like a huge barrier that we've been running up against. So I'm just curious if, you know, any thoughts or ideas on like how to get those folks who are like awesome teacher candidates access to English skills programs.
I would just, one of the tools that we use in Ventura County that we brought in is Engine. which is online English language workplace literacy training. They do phenomenal work. We're huge fans of theirs. And they have 130 some different programs. I don't know if there's an education one, but they're creating new curriculum all the time. But them or, I'm sure there are others that do it as well, but I would just encourage
We use Engine.
Oh, great, okay.
Yeah. I would also encourage you to talk to your Department of Labor and the local workforce board because they'll invest in programs like that.
Join me in thanking our incredible panelists for a really great discussion.